Hello, folks. Welcome back. Chris in Central Pennsylvania. President Cyril Ramaphosa was at the American Chamber of Commerce in South Africa on Thursday, the 9th of April, 2026. And he talked about improving relations with the United States, saying that the United States and South Africa are improving their relations. And he based this off of now fully credentialed Ambassador Brent Bozell, talking about how the U.S. would like to expand the number of companies that operate, U.S. companies operate in South Africa, and also bring foreign direct investment in South Africa. But ladies and gentlemen, there's no change in status quo. That's been the position all along. The United States would like to invest in South Africa. There's tremendous potential in South Africa. Unfortunately, South Africa's unconstitutional and racist laws make that impossible. There's been no movement in the ask that the U.S. government politely requested of South Africa. They haven't even addressed it. They've ignored it and blown it off. And in fact, when Peter Groenewald, a member of the government of national unity, went back to South Africa to give that list of requests from the U.S. government formally for a second time after it had been delivered to the embassy months prior, Cyril Ramaphosa refused to take an office call with a member of his own government of national unity, who later became the leader of that party, showing you how unserious Cyril Ramaphosa is about improving relations with the United States. He openly mocked President Trump at the G20 multiple times. Senior members of his party say the most irresponsible things like Gwede Mantashe, Fikile Mbalula, Ronald Lamola, the list goes on and on. If South Africa is serious about improving relations with the United States, number one, stop undermining our foreign policy. Number two, stop undermining that of our friends, partners, and allies. Number three, how about you get serious? Send a trade representative to Washington, appoint an ambassador to a post that's now been vacant for well over a year, and stop speaking arrogantly about the United States. It's not difficult for the ANC to distance itself from this racist chant, "Kill the Boer." They have no stake in this. That is mostly chanted by the EFF and a few other lunatics. You could distance yourself from that. Why don't you disavow that? It doesn't disavow the liberation era. It just disavows the racist nature of that chant today. If Afrikaners ran around singing a song that they write about kill the Nguni speakers, you'd lose your mind. The South African Human Rights Council or Commission would call them in and charge them with, equality court violations. But Julius Malema and others are allowed to call for the murder of their fellow citizens. It's not a hard ask. And removing the race-based legislation that doesn't empower or enrich Black South Africans and only empowers and enriches cadres, broad-based Black economic empowerment, doesn't empower anybody except connected people to the African National Congress. And it destroys entire sectors. It's caused immense pain for South Africans. It's racist, it's immoral, and it's in violation of the Constitution. You can argue that clauses in the South African Constitution support this racist legislation, but other clauses undermine it. And this legislation that Ramaphosa signed in January last year in Davos, after he'd already signed it in December, thereby cleverly avoiding the 30 days that 1/3 of Parliament had to take it to Constitutional Court if they signed a document refuting it. He simply evaded the Constitution. Then he signs this bill into law, which violates the Constitution for expropriation without compensation. If you're serious about your relations with the United States, we cannot support a country that abrogates the rule of law, that violates their own Constitution so openly, that undermines basic human rights, that violates the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to which South Africa is signatory to. The right to private property is universal, and South Africa has undermined that. And you could sit there and say, we're not taking property, it's not being used. That's nonsense. It's used as a tool to undermine property rights and draw down values, with the ultimate goal of stealing land from lawful landowners. These are not difficult things to ask for. If South Africa is serious about improving relations, it hasn't taken any steps, Peter Bruce, towards any of those issues. And until those issues are addressed, nothing is going to change. It's only going to get worse. The more mockery, the more attacks, the insults, the more vile vitriol coming from South Africa's ANC politicians and from the likes of social media commentators, as well as especially media commentators about America and about Trump, things are not going to improve. They're only going to get demonstrably worse. So instead of running articles in the media that things are improving, why don't you tell the truth? There is no trade representative. There's no ambassador. And oh, by the way, in Peter Bruce's article, he talks about how, how is the U.S. supposed to deliver those points? We don't have an ambassador. Well, it's called a diplomatic mission, Mr. Bruce. Those points were delivered to the South African embassy in Washington. It's their responsibility to forward it to their national government. That's how it's done. And after that, it was followed up by a member of the Government of National Unity, Corney Mulder, taking those points back to the president, who simply refused to listen to it. That shows you the arrogance and the lack of interest in a cordial relationship with the United States. This glad handing that's going on now, where Ramaphosa is saying that we're going to improve things because the U.S. is going to put money here, nobody's investing at a push from the United States government until your racist legislation is gone. It's as simple as that. So while I'd love to say a new day dawned, I'd love to see the U.S. and South Africa turn the page back to a time when they cooperated so that South Africans could prosper and Americans could prosper. It isn't going to happen until South Africa begins to seriously address the issues that Washington raised. And while commentators like Mr. Bruce tell you fairy tales about how Ramaphosa was disrespected and how he was ambushed, that's poppycock. He wasn't ambushed. He wasn't disrespected. He asked for a meeting. Trump cleared his calendar because the issues were important, let his delegation come, and then, like an arrogant African potentate, Ramaphosa arrived 43 minutes late. 43 minutes late. Trump didn't say anything. He took the meeting. Trump was not abusive towards him. He gave him every out in the world. The videos that were shown were not about any of his ridiculous members of his government or his party lying and saying racist things. Ramaphosa's lies were not put in the video, like there are no farm murders, there are no farmers being murdered, there are no white farmers being murdered when he lied to Bloomberg in 2018. That wasn't included. Only former members of the ANC were put up there. There were no images of the gruesome murders of the thousands, especially white South Africans killed on farms. So Ramaphosa was not intentionally embarrassed by Trump. He was unbelievably patient. But the inability of South African media personalities to be objective about this is just gobsmacking. It shows you they're in the tank for the ANC. They don't care about the truth. They don't care about this relationship. They care about pushing their false narrative, like the Afrikaner white farmer refugee program. No such thing exists. Anyway, I notice now, after a year of sharing this information, many media outlets are finally starting to acknowledge that it's not just Afrikaners, it's not just white South Africans, but coloreds, Indians, and blacks have come over. But of course, then they want to say, just a handful. Well, that's not the point. The point is that you've been lying for the past year plus. That's reality. All right, folks, I'd like to see a new day dawn, or many South Africans, many of my viewers would rather see the ANC be sanctioned and the ANC be punished hard. Well, I'm not sure where I'm at on that position. But what I can tell you is that there is no thawing of relations, and there won't be an improvement between Washington and Lutuli House until Lutuli House shows a little humility and starts addressing the things that we've asked you to address as a nation. It's pretty simple. Cheers.